In a small fishing village along the African coast, where the waves whispered secrets to the shore, lived a boy named Kofi. He was 17, strong, and full of dreams, but life had never been easy for him. His father, Kwame, was a humble fisherman who worked tirelessly from sunrise to sunset, casting his net into the sea, hoping for a good catch. But luck never seemed to favor them. The sea, though vast and full of life, yielded only a few fish each day, barely enough to fill their bellies. Kofi had lost his mother when he was very young, and though he barely remembered her face, he felt her absence deeply. His father, burdened with sorrow and responsibility, raised him alone, teaching him the ways of the ocean, the changing tides, and the patience needed to survive. But no matter how hard they worked, poverty clung to them like a shadow. Their hut, made of straw and wood, was the smallest in the village. Their clothes were patched, and their meals were simple, mostly fish and whatever little grain they could afford. Despite their struggles, Kofi never complained. He loved his father and respected his hard work. But deep inside, he longed for more. He dreamed of a life where they wouldn't have to worry about the next meal, where people wouldn't look down on them. He dreamed of adventure, of something greater waiting beyond the horizon. However, the village was not kind to the poor. The wealthier fishermen and traders mocked Kofi and his father, calling them cursed. The village chief, a greedy man who controlled most of the trade, treated them like outcasts. His daughter, Nana, was one of the few who saw Kofi differently. She admired his strength and determination, though she was forbidden from speaking to him. One evening, as the villagers gathered around the storyteller, Kofi listened with wide eyes. The old man spoke of an ancient legend, a hidden treasure buried beneath the sea, guarded by spirits. It was said that whoever found it would change their fate forever. The tale lingered in Kofi's mind long after the fire died down, filling his heart with a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, his destiny was waiting out there, beyond the waves. Every morning, before the sun rose, Kofi and his father set out to sea in their small wooden boat. The salty wind brushed against their faces as they paddled through the gentle waves, hoping for a good catch. Kwame would cast his fishing net with skill, just as his father had taught him long ago. Kofi would watch closely, learning every movement, every trick to catching fish. But no matter how hard they tried, the sea never seemed to favor them. Their net would come up almost empty, just a few small fish, never enough to sell for a good price. As they returned to shore, the other fishermen laughed at them. "Maybe the sea knows you are too weak to handle its riches," one of them would sneer. Others whispered that they were cursed, that no matter how hard they worked, they would always remain the poorest in the village. Kofi clenched his fists but said nothing. His father had taught him to stay humble, to let words pass like the wind. But deep inside, the words hurt. He hated how the villagers looked down on them, how they were treated as if they didn't belong. At the market, the rich traders barely gave them a glance. They paid little for their fish, leaving Kofi and his father with just a handful of coins. It was never enough. Some nights, they went to bed hungry. Kofi would lie awake, staring at the roof of their tiny hut, dreaming of a better life. He imagined having a boat big enough to catch plenty of fish, a home strong enough to keep out the cold, and a future where his father no longer had to struggle. But no matter how much he dreamed, reality always pulled him back. He felt trapped, as if his life had already been decided for him, and no amount of wishing could change it. In the village, wealth and status meant everything. The chief and the rich traders held all the power, while the poor, like Kofi and his father, were treated as if they did not matter. When Kofi and Kwame walked through the marketplace, people barely noticed them. The traders gave them the worst prices for their fish, while the chief's guards often pushed them aside to make way for the wealthy fishermen. It didn't matter how hard they worked. The village had already decided their place, and it was at the very bottom. The chief, a proud and greedy man, saw Kofi and his father as nothing more than beggars. He believed only the strong deserved to thrive, and to him, strength meant wealth. His daughter, Nana, did not share his views. She often watched Kofi from a distance, admiring how he never gave up despite the hardships. She saw how he woke up early every day, how he fought against the waves, and how he never complained, even when people mocked him, but she could never say a word to him. Her father had made it clear she was never to associate with someone so poor. Still, whenever their eyes met, She would give him a small secret smile, and for a brief moment, Kofi felt as if someone in the village truly saw him. One evening, as the villagers gathered around the great fire, the storyteller, an old man with a voice like the wind, spoke of an ancient legend. His wrinkled hands moved with each word as he told the tale of a hidden treasure buried deep beneath the sea. "It is no ordinary treasure," he whispered. "It is guarded by spirits, and only the one who is truly worthy can claim it." The villagers listened in awe, though most of them laughed at the idea of such a thing being real. But Kofi did not laugh. As he sat in the shadows, listening to the old man's words, something inside him stirred. He did not know why, but he felt as if the story was speaking directly to him, as if destiny itself was calling his name. One evening, as Kofi and his father set out to sea, the sky was clear and the waves were calm. It seemed like any other night, but something in the air felt different. The wind carried a strange heaviness, as if whispering a warning that only the sea could understand. Kwame, experienced in reading nature's signs, hesitated for a moment, but the thought of returning empty-handed pushed him forward. They paddled farther into the deep waters, casting their nets under the moon's pale glow. Suddenly, the wind howled, and the sea roared to life. Dark clouds swallowed the sky, and lightning slashed across the heavens. The waves rose like giants crashing against their small boat. Kofi gripped the wooden edges, his heart pounding. "Hold on!" his father shouted, but the ocean was too strong. A monstrous wave lifted their boat high into the air before slamming it down with terrifying force. The world spun as Kofi was thrown into the cold, churning water. He tried to swim, to call out for his father, but the sea pulled him under. Darkness swallowed him whole. When Kofi opened his eyes, he was lying on wet sand. The storm was gone, and the air was strangely quiet. He pushed himself up, coughing out salty water, and looked around. This was not his village. It was an island, unlike anything he had ever seen. The trees were tall and twisted, their leaves glowing faintly in the moonlight. The ground was marked with strange symbols that pulsed, like beating hearts. The air itself seemed to whisper, voices so soft they were almost part of the wind. Kofi's body ached, but his mind was filled with questions. Where was he? What had happened to his father? And why did this place feel as if it had been waiting for him? As Kofi struggled to his feet, the whispers in the wind grew louder, surrounding him like a song only he could hear. The strange symbols on the ground glowed brighter, casting an eerie blue light around him. Then, from the shadows of the trees, a figure emerged. It was an old man with skin as dark as the night and eyes that shimmered like the ocean under the sun. His long white hair flowed down his back, and his robes moved as if they were made of water itself. He stood tall, yet there was no weight in his steps, as if he was part of the air, part of the sea. "Kofi," the man said, his voice deep and powerful. "I have been waiting for you." Kofi took a step back, his heart racing. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The old man smiled. "I am the spirit of the ocean, the keeper of its secrets, and the guardian of its past. And you, young one, are more than just a poor fisherman's son." Kofi frowned. "What do you mean?" The spirit raised his hand, and suddenly the wind carried images before Kofi's eyes. Visions of warriors standing tall, their armor shining like gold, their spears raised in victory. A great kingdom stood behind them, its towers reaching toward the sky. Then the image darkened, showing battles, fire, and finally the kingdom sinking beneath the waves. "Your ancestors were once great warriors," the spirit continued. "They were protectors of a powerful kingdom, a place of wisdom and strength. But greed and betrayal brought it to ruin, and the treasure that held its power was lost beneath the sea." Kofi stared in shock. "My ancestors," he repeated. "But my father and I are just fishermen. We have nothing." The spirit stepped closer, placing a hand on Kofi's shoulder. "Blood remembers, even when the mind forgets. You are the last heir of that forgotten kingdom, and now, it is time to restore what was lost. The treasure is waiting, but only the one who is worthy can claim it." That is your destiny. Kofi felt the weight of the words settle in his heart. Could it be true? Could he, a boy who had known nothing but hardship, really be chosen for something greater? The whispers in the wind seemed to echo his thoughts, urging him forward. He took a deep breath. Whatever lay ahead, he knew there was no turning back now. The spirit of the ocean led Kofi through the mysterious island until they reached a great stone door covered in glowing symbols. Behind this door lies the treasure, the spirit said, but only the one who proves himself worthy may claim it. You must pass 3 trials. If you fail, the treasure will remain lost forever. Kofi nodded, determination filling his heart. He had come too far to turn back now. The first trial was the test of courage. The spirit pointed toward a dark pathway ahead. It was filled with thousands of glowing fireflies, their tiny lights flickering beautifully. But as Kofi stepped forward, the fireflies changed. Their lights grew hotter, turning into flames that floated in the air, forming a burning sea around him. The heat was intense, and fear gripped his heart. One wrong step, and he could be swallowed by fire. But he forced himself to move forward. He took slow, steady steps, trusting his instincts. The flames flickered and swayed, but they did not touch him. With each step, his fear faded, and by the time he reached the other side, the fireflies had returned to their gentle glow. He had passed the first trial. The second trial was the test of wisdom. Before him stood an ancient stone tablet with a riddle carved into it. I have no mouth, yet I speak. I have no ears, yet I listen. I am never seen, yet I am always felt. What am I? Kofi frowned, thinking hard. He repeated the words to himself, trying to find the answer. Then, suddenly, he understood. The wind, he said. The moment the words left his lips, the stone tablet glowed, and the great door in front of him creaked open. He had passed the second trial. The final test was the hardest, the test of heart. Inside the treasure chamber, gold and jewels sparkled like stars, more riches than Kofi had ever imagined. But in the corner of the room, he saw something else. A small child trapped beneath a heavy stone. The child's eyes were filled with fear, and his cries echoed in the chamber. Kofi knew he had a choice. He could take the treasure and change his life forever. Or he could help the child and risk losing everything. Without hesitation, Kofi ran to the child. He pushed with all his strength, struggling to move the heavy stone. Sweat dripped from his forehead, but he did not give up. Finally, with one last effort, the stone rolled away, freeing the child. As soon as he did, a bright light filled the chamber, and the spirit of the ocean appeared once more. You have proven your heart is pure, the spirit said with a proud smile. The treasure is now yours. Kofi turned, expecting to see only gold, but instead, at the center of the room, lay something far greater, an ancient crown and a map. As he picked them up, he felt a strange energy flow through him. He had done it. He had passed the trials, but he knew this was only the beginning of his true journey. Kofi stood in the glowing chamber, his heart pounding as he looked at the treasure before him, but it was not what he had expected. There were no piles of gold or sparkling jewels like the stories had told. Instead, at the center of the room lay an ancient crown, beautifully crafted with golden patterns that shimmered in the dim light. Beside it was a rolled-up map, its edges worn with age. The spirit of the ocean stepped forward, his eyes filled with wisdom. This is the true treasure, he said. Not riches, not gold, but your past, the key to your destiny. Kofi carefully picked up the crown, feeling its weight in his hands. The moment his fingers touched the metal, a strange energy rushed through him, filling his body with warmth and strength. Images flashed in his mind, visions of a grand kingdom, warriors in shining armor, and a mighty king sitting on a golden throne. Then he saw the same kingdom swallowed by the sea, disappearing into darkness. You are the last heir of that lost kingdom, the spirit continued. Your ancestors were great rulers, protectors of the land and the sea, but greed and betrayal led to their downfall. The kingdom was lost, its people scattered, and its history forgotten. But now, you have the chance to restore what was lost. This map will guide you to what remains of your kingdom, and this crown will reveal your true power. Kofi's hands trembled as he held the crown. He had spent his whole life thinking he was just a poor fisherman's son, struggling to survive. Now he was being told he was a descendant of kings. It felt impossible, yet deep inside, something in him knew it was true. The sea had brought him here for a reason. His journey was far from over. It was only just beginning. With the crown and map secured, Kofi knew it was time to return home. The spirit of the ocean guided him to a small wooden boat waiting by the shore. The moment Kofi stepped inside, the wind picked up, and the sea carried him forward as if the waves themselves were guiding him. The journey back felt shorter than before, and by sunrise, he saw the familiar coastline of his village. As Kofi stepped onto the shore, the villagers gathered around, staring at him in shock. They had believed him lost to the sea, swallowed by the storm. But here he was, alive and different. There was something in his eyes, in the way he stood, that made them uneasy. When they saw the crown in his hands, whispers spread through the crowd. "Where did he find that?" some asked. "Is it real?" Others murmured. Some were in awe, while others looked at him with jealousy. Then the village chief stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "Kofi," he said, his voice filled with suspicion, "where did you get this treasure?" Kofi held his head high. "The sea led me to it," he said firmly. "It is my destiny," the chief sneered. A poor fisherman's son, speaking of destiny. He laughed, but there was no humor in his voice. "You are nothing, boy. That treasure belongs to the village. Give it to me." Kofi tightened his grip on the crown. "This does not belong to you," he said. "It belongs to my ancestors." The chief's face darkened. He reached for the crown, but the moment his fingers touched it, a powerful force pushed him back, knocking him to the ground. The villagers gasped in fear. The air around Kofi seemed to shimmer, as if an unseen power was protecting him. The chief scrambled to his feet, his face red with anger. "Witchcraft!" he shouted. "He is cursed!" But deep inside, even he knew the truth. Kofi was no longer just a poor fisherman's son. He was something more, something greater, and no amount of greed could take that away from him. Kofi stood tall, the ancient crown still in his hands. The villagers watched in silence, their eyes filled with fear, doubt, and curiosity. Slowly, he lifted the crown and placed it on his head. The moment the crown touched his brow, a powerful wind swept through the village, stronger than any storm. The sky darkened for a moment, and then, one by one, glowing figures began to appear around him. They were warriors, dressed in shining armor, their faces strong and proud. These were the spirits of his ancestors, the lost warriors of the forgotten kingdom. They stood behind Kofi, their weapons raised, their eyes filled with loyalty. The villagers gasped, stepping back in fear. Even the chief, once so bold and greedy, stumbled as he tried to move away. This is impossible," he whispered, his face pale. The spirits did not speak, but their presence alone was enough. They had waited for centuries, waiting for the true heir to rise again. And now, they had found him. Kofi turned to face the chief and the corrupt traders who had ruled with greed and cruelty. Their power was nothing now. Trembling, the chief took a step back, then another, before turning and running, his followers close behind him. They disappeared into the forest, never to return. The villagers who had once mocked Kofi now fell to their knees. They had seen the truth with their own eyes. Kofi was no ordinary fisherman's son. He was their rightful leader. They bowed before him, their voices trembling. "Forgive us," they murmured. "We did not know." Kofi looked at them, not with anger, but with understanding. He had suffered, yes, but he had also learned. He would not be like the chief who had ruled with fear. He would be different. He would lead with wisdom, kindness, and strength. "Rise," he said. "The past is behind us. It is time to build a better future." With the treasure he had found, Kofi transformed the village. He built stronger homes, a thriving marketplace, and a school so that children could learn. The once poor village became a powerful kingdom, a place of peace and prosperity. No one went hungry, and no one was treated unfairly. Kofi ruled not as a king of riches, but as a king of the people. Beside him stood Nana, the chief's daughter, who had always seen his worth even when others had not. Together, they ruled with fairness and love, guiding their people toward a brighter future. And so, the village storyteller spoke of Kofi's journey for generations. Children listened with wide eyes, learning that destiny was not just for the rich or the powerful, but for those who were brave enough to follow it. Kofi's name lived on, not just as a king, but as a boy who had dared to believe in something greater. And as long as the waves touched the shore, his story would never be forgotten.